On November 13th, multiple terror attacks occurred in Paris. It all happened between 9:20 p.m. and 9:50 p.m. local time. Several coordinated attacks were carried out in several different places like a soccer stadium, a theater, restaurants, and a bar. Attacks were consisted of mass shootings, suicide bombings, and hostage taking, leaving 129 people dead and 433 people injured. 7 terrorists died. The next day, on November 14th, ISIS announced that they were responsible for the attacks. The announcement says, "This was a lesson for any country that decides to stand against ISIS," and referred Paris as the capital of prostitution and obscenity. It's ISIS that is the capital of prostitution and obscenity. You literally have sex slaves, ISIS. You do human trafficking. You rape and kill, and you call Paris that?
Jerk off.
After that, France started multiple raids for other accomplices, and they launched airstrikes on Raqqa, Syria, the capital of ISIS, so to speak, targeting a command center, a recruitment center, an ammunition storage base, and a training camp, initiating a quick and hard retaliation. People around the world sent support and love to Paris, and it seems clear that terrorism couldn't break down the citizens of Paris. They're getting back to their feet and trying to get back to their lives. After the attacks, people are speaking of solidarity more than frustration and fear. A chef of one of the restaurants near the attack sites reopened this restaurant shortly after the attacks, saying, "Terrorists want us to fear, and I'm reopening the restaurant to show them we're continuing our lives despite their attacks. Of course, there's fear, but there's also courage." On the other hand, there are also rising fear and suspicion towards Muslims and Syrian refugees. Many Muslims around the world used #NotInMyName to stand against ISIS and the extremism. They sent their support to France and explained that what ISIS is doing is not Islam, but they couldn't stop the backlash and Islamophobia. There were assaults, vandalism, and threats against Muslims. Mosques were vandalized, and a Muslim woman was beaten and robbed by 2 men while picking up her children from school in Toronto. The attackers called her a terrorist and told her to go back to her country. A passenger attacked the Uber driver in North Carolina because he thought he was a Muslim. And Muslim family's house was targeted by shooting in Florida. But thankfully, no one was home during the shooting. Also, conservative groups in many countries are demanding for their borders to be closed to the refugees. Almost 30 governors of the United States is refusing to accept Syrian refugees in their states. The article says in addition to that, a number of other Republican lawmakers encouraged House GOP leadership to defund any administrative efforts to resettle Syrian refugees within the United States. But actually, many of those governors who came out in opposition to resettlement have barely taken in any Syrian refugees to begin with. And several presidential candidates called on the White House to only focus on Christian Syrians. Despite all this, Obama is not backing off from his initial proposal to admit 10,000 refugees, saying, "We don't have religious tests to our compassion. Our nations can welcome refugees who are desperately seeking safety and ensure our own security." Okay, first of all, the refugees are also victims of ISIS. We shouldn't forget that. They fled their homes because there's nothing except death and destruction in their country. They ran from their civil war and attacks from ISIS. Second, rejecting refugees only helps ISIS. Josh Hampson of United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees said that keeping Syrian refugees in the Middle Eastern countries where they are currently concentrated increases the probability that they will grow susceptible to radicalization. The study shows that the 2 greatest indicators of whether resettled refugees will commit acts of terror are poor living conditions and a lack of hospitable treatment in their host countries. And refugees are leaving Lebanon, Jordan, Syria, and Egypt for Europe because of loss of hope and appalling living conditions. If the West shuts refugees out, they are likely to turn to extremism. Also, if we start alienating Muslims, ISIS is going to divide the world between Muslims and who are not, when it should be between who are killing innocent people and who are not. Third, even if the United States decide to accept refugees, it's really hard for terrorists to come in the first place. Passing through the process often takes at least 18 months and sometimes much longer. Applicants must pass background checks involving several US government agencies, and many applicants are rejected. Refugees are personally interviewed and thorough background checks are performed by Homeland Security and the FBI. Lastly, we don't close the door on people who are running for their lives and in need of our help. Just like Parisians launched the hashtag Open Door to offer shelter to people that need help on the day of the attacks, refugees are not just Syrians and Muslims, they are people first. I think that's the most important thing here. We don't let terrorists make us turn away from our values like that. If we turn extreme, irrational, and full of hate, that's the ultimate proof that we have given in to those terrorists. That's what they want. A world filled with hatred and suspicion against fellow men. If we were to choose violence and rejection against certain people because of their religion or nationality, we're no better than ISIS. We have to show them our values cannot be corrupted. And even though there's a backlash for now, people will come back to seeing reason soon. Because I learned that even when people get weakened by terrorist attacks like Paris, they always manage to show the world their incredible strength. And I'm not talking about the strength of thousands of missiles they can pour on terrorists. I'm talking about people's unity and understanding. A year ago, there was a terror attack in Australia. It was committed by a Muslim extremist. The scale was smaller compared to the Paris attack, but it was just as serious. After the attack, of course, there was a backlash against Muslims, just like a backlash right now. But thousands of people also started the hashtag I'll Ride With You campaign, offering to meet Muslim people at their local stations and to ride with them on their journey. It was a thoughtful gesture to Muslims who were getting blamed after the attack. Those simple acts showed the whole world the strength of humanity. Those acts showed the world that they were the citizens of a mature society. Those were the people the terrorists couldn't defeat. And just like hashtag I'll Ride With You, people will start to see beyond the fog of anger. And France already started doing that, despite the fact that it's merely few days after the incident. French president, okay, I have to be careful here, I always fuck up his name, François Hollande, said on November 18th that he remains committed to taking in refugees, saying we also have to verify people who are coming onto the European territory and into France to make sure there are zero risks for our country. So we will be executing necessary verification before accepting any refugees onto our soil. And in this video, you can see people of Paris hugging a blindfolded Muslim man in a square. The blindfolded man was standing with two signs that said, I'm a Muslim, but I'm told that I'm a terrorist. And I trust you. Do you trust me? If yes, hug me. And people embraced him. France is the nation of freedom, equality, and fraternity. And France is once again proving to the world that it earned its name. So, to recap, our values good, no scapegoating Muslims, and ISIS, you are assholes, and we need strong coalition to stand against ISIS, yeah? But as much as the coalition is needed, shelters for refugees are also needed. At the same time, we have to make sure to prevent these kinds of terror attacks from ever happening again. So all countries need the solid procedures with verification to accept refugees safely.
Greetings world, we are anonymous.
ISIS, now the Anonymous is after you. You're up against pretty much everybody. People of France, Muslims, and every sane person in the world. Now the Anonymous too. Approximately 3,000 Vs are coming after your ass. Except they can't fight like V, but they're all hackers. So, yeah, I don't know if that's better or worse, but yeah, ISIS, take that. We're coming after you. All together. Yeah. So, I hope to hear about your opinions, and I'm gonna talk about Beirut too, but next time. For now, I'm just gonna watch a bunch of nice and fun things. Yep.